So, good evening, all. Thank you very much, Richard and Mark, for coming today to present to us on the steam engine rebuild. I will leave you to do your own introductions if that's okay.
Yeah, we'll probably introduce in the actual presentation if that's all right, Jaden.
No, that's perfect. Thank you. I'm going to drop my camera off so you both can be the only ones on attention for this one.
Okay, you ready, man?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay, so I'll just share my screen. Okay, so this afternoon, stroke evening, we're going to be talking to you. It's going to be a shortish presentation about the journey of the Lord Oliver Brown that started with myself and Mark about 5 years ago. So I will pass you over to Mark to introduce himself.
So hi, so I'm Mark. I own the locomotive that we're going to be talking about today. I'm going to answer a few random questions to start with. So how do you buy a locomotive? It's quite an unusual thing to own, and quite simply, I read it in a magazine one day that a steam locomotive was for sale. So I went and inquired about the price, and about 6 months later, its price had dropped significantly. I didn't think at all about why it would have dropped, and so I bought it. So I've always been interested in sort of steam engines and steam trains and traction engines all my life. When I was at university studying, I was during the summer, I was one of the engineers on the UK's only coal-fired paddle steamer, which is called the Kingswood Castle, and you can see that in Dartmouth. And I did various other I volunteered for various other railways as well. If you look at the bottom picture there, that's the photo of the engine on the day I bought it, which was in 2016. So you can see it doesn't really look like much. So you had to have quite a lot of creativity and vision to see it through. So if I could just have the next slide, please, Rich. So a bit about my Network Rail background. So I'm not an engineer at all. I joined Network Rail in 2019 after doing a degree in politics, philosophy, and economics at Exeter. And after that, I went straight into Network Rail. So I joined Plymouth DU as it was then as a general management graduate. So pretty vague. And I did a few things for the DU there, looked at access and also tried to plan in the use of that road rail Land Rover you could see at the bottom. But then in 2020, as we all know, COVID hit. So I decided to go to the COVID contingency signalling school. As back then it was all panic stations, and everyone thought you were going to run out of signallers. So I went in Newport to become a signaller, and I have been signalling trains ever since then. And I absolutely love the main motivations for that is because the shift work allowed me to complete this project. If I wasn't doing shift work, I think I would have struggled to find the time, because if any of you are really hot on geography, Plymouth and Westbury in Wiltshire are not exactly side by side. Westbury is about 2.5 hours away, and so I do actually live 2 hours away from the engine. So there you go. So that's a bit about me. So I'm not an engineer by profession, but I certainly I do love engineering. I've always been interested in it.
So yeah, a bit about myself then, and I am an engineer. So I joined Network Rail back in 2002. Done 5 years or so on construction sites as engineer prior to that, and prior to that, civil engineering degree in Nottingham. So I have spent around about 20 years, give or take, working in track maintenance. I came on in what was called the track engineering conversion course, where Railtrack at the time converted engineers from different disciplines into railway engineers. I then secured a job as an assistant area track engineer in Exeter. And then when Network Rail took over, I moved to Plymouth as the assistant track maintenance engineer, and then moved on to be the track maintenance engineer, which I did for a bit over 10 years. Following that, I moved into a TA, into the technical authority, and I've been in the TA now for around about 4 years as a senior engineer in the track frameworks and assurance team, which means that I deal with standard updates. I'm the technical lead for hot weather and track, technical lead for longitudinal bearer systems, amongst other stuff, dealing with things like investigations and product acceptance and all that kind of interesting stuff. You'll also see a picture there of me on a lifeboat. I have been on the lifeboat crew at Plymouth for the RNLI from 2004 to 2025. And you'll kind of see how that is relevant on the next slide. So this project, it started with a chance conversation between two Network Rail colleagues in a Network Rail office. So Mark was a graduate, as he just said, and I was a TME, and at the time was mentoring him. We were the only two in the office one evening, just chatting around, random stuff. Mark mentioned that he had a steam engine. My response was, what on earth are you going to do with that? It just seemed like an extremely strange thing to have, especially at the age that Mark was. I think he was around about 19 at the time. His reply was that he wanted to rebuild it, maybe paint it up for charity or something like that. And that's when it kind of clicked in my head. I know a great charity that you could use this for. And Mark agreed to this. And we went away that evening and just started on the design. So I better talk a little bit about Oliver's story and the Children's Hospice Southwest. So Oliver's dad, Mike, he served on a lifeboat with me for 10 years before Oliver became seriously ill. So Oliver and his brother Benjamin, very much part of the lifeboat family and community, and were very close friends with us. Children's Hospice Southwest is a charity that supported Oliver and his family. They loved visiting a little harbour hospice in St Austell, which is one of their 3 hospices, which they own and run. And it's where Oliver chose to spend the last week of his life before finally passing away. And that was at the age of 11. So I discussed the whole idea of the Lord Oliver Brown with Mike and his wife Nikki, and yeah, they loved it. So kind of went on from there. There's a good few photos there. So at the top you've got Mike, Oliver, his younger brother Benjamin, and that's at Whitsands in Cornwall, just near Plymouth. Oliver and Benjamin on the in the middle top there, and then you've got Oliver, Benjamin, and my 2 younger ones, Josh and Lottie, in the hammock. Mike in the Y boat, which is a daughter boat of the 7 class we have at Plymouth, just mucking around as normal. And you've got Oliver and Benjamin dressed up in RNLI kit on top of the boat in the bottom middle one, and then the bottom right is the initial design, which and the colour scheme which I did for the Lord Oliver Brown. Just moving on.
Shall we just quickly? I'll just quickly divulge into why it was called the Lord Oliver Brown. So Oliver himself wasn't a lord, but sadly, I think through the last 2 or 3 years of his life, he had to have around 6 or 7 operations. So he was in hospital for quite some time because he had a very weakened immune system. And after a period of time, he asked his mother whether he could start signing the consent forms that you have to sign if you have an operation, which, lets everyone know about the legal risks, etc., etc. And one day he just asked his mum whether he could sign them, and he started signing them. And then eventually he just self-proclaimed himself as Lord, which is, I think, sadly, I never got to meet Oliver, but I think that's the sort of cheeky boy he was. And so in all the forms thereafter, he was known as the Lord. And I think it was even shown on his hospital, on all his hospital tags, that he was the Lord. And I don't know if any of you like steam trains at all, but steam trains often have these grand titles, whether it's the Earl of Edgecombe or any other noble title. So the fact that Oliver self-proclaimed himself a lord really fitted in to this idea that we were going to name a steam engine after him. And so those colours there, the bright pink and the bright green, are very much a Oliver influence, because those were his favourite colours. And as the owner, I also wanted to paint a steam engine pink because I knew it would be highly controversial, because you don't really get to see pink trains that often, let alone traditional old steam trains. So and so Rich and I that day of the conversation knocked up this design, and yeah, that's sort of where it started. So we went from a large pile of rusty parts that you will see in a short while, and all we had for inspiration really is that photo that Rich designed with all the color schemes on it.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. It's a lot easier for you to talk about these things than it is for me.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, so I'll talk a little bit about the engine. So it's not actually British, which makes it even more unusual. So it's actually built in Poland. It was built in 1959. So if you look at the top left photo, that's a photo of when it worked. Now steam stopped in Britain in 1968, but because of communism and the fact that Poland just generally wasn't as economically developed, they didn't stop using steam trains for a lot later. In fact, in the 90s and the fall of communism, they were still using them. By which point in the 90s in Britain, people were already very romanticised about steam and wanted to bring them back in some sort of touristic capacity. And so there were 6 steam engines that were exported from Poland that made it over to the UK. And that's how this steam engine made it all the way from southeast Poland. It actually worked its life in a steels works very close to the Ukrainian border. And that's how it ended up in the southwest of England. So yeah, that's what it looked like in 1992 when it left Poland in the top left, and I bought it looking like it does there. So if the bottom 3 photos, you can see I bought it in the condition it is in the bottom left photo, and the 2 bottom right photos is what it looked like when it arrived in Plymouth. So you can pretty much see it arrived on 2 lorries, a gigantic meccano set with lots and lots of pipe work. It was complete rat's nest of pipe work really, and there's no plans or anything like that to figure out how it was all going to go back together again. So that is what we were dealing with.
So when Mark says we, this is the core team, the 4 of us, which we basically tried to get through the whole lot between ourselves. There was a coded welder as well, which did a lot of the coded welding, well, all the coded welding that was required. But the team was basically Mark. So Mark is the owner, the project manager, very good at talking about stuff and ensuring compliance with HRA guidance and PSR 2000 regs. Then bottom left is myself. So I'm pretty much a general lackey, good at making sure things were straight and square, and a budding welder. So during the project, I've kind of learned to weld a little bit, fairly well. I wouldn't say well at all. Top right is Ian. So Ian used to be Mike's boss in the dockyard. He was a captain in the Royal Navy. He was the chief engineer for the submarine fleet in the UK. And he's just great at thinking of solutions to engineering problems quickly, as in he's a bit of a bodger, but always got the job done, and it always worked. And then there's Watty, bottom right. He's one of my best mates. He's been on lifeboat crew with me for about, I don't know, 17 years. Obviously served with Mike as well. He's a marina manager in Plymouth. He's a pretty good welder. And pretty good at pretty much anything. He can put his hand to anything, and even teaching me to weld as part of that. So yeah, that is the team, and the picture on the right hand side is the 4 of us looking very proud of what we'd achieved so far there.
Yeah, so I'll just elaborate a tiny bit on the team. I think it's obviously important to note that we all did it in our free time. So and the amount of hours we put in as a team is pretty wild when you think about it. How we ever got it past our wives and families, I don't know. But at times we were spending 2 days a week, which is quite a lot, especially over 6 years, which is sort of what it took us to do it. And again, both Rich and I were very lucky to be employed by Network Rail, because it did mean we get the 5 days volunteering leave. So if you don't use them already and you are part of Network Rail, I would highly suggest that you do it, because it's a really good opportunity to learn new skills and also add real value to certain projects that would otherwise just not be possible. And I do definitely believe there's a lot of good that's come out of this, and a lot of that is because Network Rail offered the volunteer leave. So the rebuild, so split it up into sections, but the most important part of the rebuild was definitely the boiler. Steam engine boilers, if left in the wrong hands, are basically bombs, and I don't say that lightly. They if left in the wrong hands, they will explode and they will kill pretty much everyone around it. So as a consequence of that fact, everything needs to be done correctly, and it all needs to be done in line with the legislation, which is the pressure PSR regulator 2000. So all the welding needs to be coded, it all needs to be planned, all the sketches need to be approved by an independent body to make sure that it's planned correctly and it's carried out. And then once the welding is actually carried out, it all then needs to be subjected to various types of NDT. And so the NDT that we use most of all on the engine is MPI, so magnetic particle, and ultrasound to check the integrity of the welds. So if you look at the top left photo, you can see there's a boiler, and you may or may not be able to see there's basically nothing behind it. And so what was left when I bought it was a shell. The barrel was completely empty, and we had to put in a brand new tube plate. Now that is 18mm thick steel, and just the welding around the whole of the barrel is 12 laps of weld. So you can imagine how long it took the coded welder to do that. So the tube plate is brand new, and that's the if you look at the on the bottom row in the central photo, you can see the front tube plate is now welded in at that point. And then you can see a few of the tubes. So those are fire tubes. So what happens is the hot gases from the coal fire, which burns in the firebox, which is in the bottom right of the photo, the hot gases pass through those 203 tubes, and they obviously transfer the heat from the fire in a fairly efficient way, and that's what distributes the heat throughout the boiler, which is surrounds that firebox, and that creates a steam, and it's a steam that obviously makes the engine go by pushing the pistons. So every single bit of welding on that boiler needed to be absolutely spot on. There's no real room for error, because if it goes bang, there are consequences. And so consequently, all the studs, every stud, every single thread, every single pad that was on that boiler originally, it was removed and renewed. And you can see the old pads being removed in the bottom left photo. And yeah, working in the boiler is not particularly fun and glorified at times. You can just about see Rich hiding away in the boiler doing a pretty thankless task. He was, I can't remember what you were actually doing. I think you were measuring something. I can't remember, but there's a picture of Rich, and Rich, for context there, has basically absolutely no space to go up or down. It is completely confined other than where his head is, where he could just about pop up. So that's a bit about the boiler. Bear with me. I'm just going to check my notes. So I've already sort of hinted about the NDT that we need to do for the welding. Once all the welding was complete, the way to check our work additionally, so not only did we have to check that the welds were all perfect, we then had to check that the rest of the work and the boiler was sound. So the way you do that is by subjecting it to a hydraulic test, and that involves filling the boiler up with water and using hydraulic pressure, so continuously filling up to the water until the boiler can physically take no more. And we took that up to a hydraulic pressure of 1.5 times working pressure, and that we passed that test in 2023, and that's when the brand new boiler ticket started. So that was a big day, because it meant we'd sort of succeeded in what we were what we were trying to do from a legal point of view, because without that test you couldn't get insurance to operate trains. So we'll go on to the next slide, please. So I've obviously hinted about the rebuild work we had to do with the boiler, but there was also a lot of fabrication as well. And again, the coded welder didn't have to do that, but he was the chosen contractor to do the fabrication. So you can see a few new elements there. If you look at the top right, that's an example of the old coal bunker. So that is a big box which is at the rear of the engine, and that holds 2.5 tons of coal. And all of that was completely rotted out. So rather than waste time patching it up, a new one was made, and you can see that at the bottom right. And then again, if you go into the middle photo, you can see there's a big cylinder. Now that's what you call a smoke box. So that's not part of the pressure vessel. It's not part of the boiler. It's where all the smoke ends up, and then it goes out through the funnel. So that whole new ring was brand new and had to be formed, and a new face welded on. And so that was a big task. And finally, just another example. Just these aren't all the fabrications we've done. But another part was the ash. That's an ash pan upside down. So what that does is it just collects ash, as the name suggests, underneath the firebox. But that hugs round the third axle. So I don't know if any of you are familiar with hot axle box detectors, and why steam engines always set them off. Well, it's because invariably there's one axle that is surrounded by the ash pan, which is right underneath the fire. So it's that excessive heat which builds up in the ash pan and the firebox, which sets off the modern day hot axle box detectors. So signalers like myself, if we ever get a train on the main line and if it goes past a hot axle box detector, we'll always set it off, and we'll always need to ignore it, basically. So anyway, we'll go on to the next slide, please, Rich. And so this is just a few photos of us carrying out the rebuild. So you can see we are doing pretty much a wide range of sort of activities. So you can see as we're heating things, we're annealing pipes. All the copper pipes had to be annealed to make sure that they wouldn't work hard and over time. Lots of grinding. You can see Rich grinding. I have no idea what you were doing there. Do you remember what you were doing in that photo?
I can't say I do. Grinding a bit of metal, I think.
Yeah, grinding a bit of metal, which is pretty much what you're doing the whole time. But yeah, there's lots of things. You can see Rich bottom left there drilling. I think they were M36 holes into this curved bit of steel. So drilling M36 holes is pretty difficult stuff, especially on a radius like that. So you can see Rich used a mag drill there, which was made pretty light work of it. And again, I think if you look bottom right, you can see a picture of Rich in an RRV. So I don't, as a TME for 20 years, I think you were pretty excited the day you got to finally drive an RRV and play with a digger and lift things, as it were. So that was just one example of how I think it was it was fun to do it. So I will have the next slide, please. And again, just loads more photos of us. You can see Rich looking pretty pleased with himself there. I don't actually know what you were doing, but
that was the telltales.
You are definitely a great poser, definitely.
It was drilling all the telltales. That was a thankless task. It was inside. Mark, explain what the telltales are.
Telltale is so there are 600 stays that are welded in the boiler. So that's every single stay has to be welded around both ends. So that's a lot of welding. Thankfully, we didn't have to replace the stays, but to ensure we know that the stays aren't broken, there are telltales that are drilled through either end. And basically, if the stay was broken, then you would see steam and water leaking out the telltales. So Rich had the thankless task of making sure all 1,200 telltales were clear of debris, and he definitely didn't break any drills in the process. but there and so then again there's just a few photos of us just doing various types of things, from welding to gas axing to using the lathe and milling machine. There was a lot of parts that needed machining over the years. So I will have the next photo, please. And yet again, so there we're gently coming to the end of the rebuild. So these are all photos from around this time last year, actually. And you can see Rich there. He's in between the frames. So that's the second one from the left on the top. He's in between the frames renewing the trimming. So there's no roller bearings on an engine built in 1959. So it's all got cotton trimmings. So every cotton trimming had to be renewed, and there's Rich. He's just made new ones, and he's putting them in the new axle boxes there. And yeah, so I think we'll go with the next photo, please. Or next slide, sorry. And yeah, I will let you take this one.
Yeah, thank you. So as you can imagine, there's an awful lot of painting to be done. We had paint donated, and as with the rest of the work, we had to do it in a scaffold tent. There was a scaffold tent put around it. We were working through winter, not particularly good weather, wet and windy a lot of the time. So the scaffold tent was absolutely essential. Again, donated by a local scaffold firm. You can see the second picture from the left at the top. That's Nikki, so that is Oliver's mum. She is putting on the first splash of colour onto the engine. So that was a bit of a momentous moment there. So we had several volunteer painting working parties to help with this. It was a colossal task. And then that included volunteers from Babcock, from the Round Circle, and just a lot of friends and family. It was a real team effort to get that amount of paint on in that amount of time. Yeah, you can just see on the photos some of the access where you had to like be kind of squeezing in underneath the boiler, and yeah, it was just it was fun to start with, but it was a very long process. And yeah, a lot of work.
Definitely, every single coat had about at least 5 coats of paint on it, and yeah, we did have a lot of help for that part, and that was around that was the first 3 months of this year as we were getting it ready. But it was great. I think we had around 40 people in total, 40 people, and I would go to the railway and I had no idea who was working on it, which made a great change, because for the first 8 years of the project, it was pretty much just the 4 of us. So yeah, it was lovely to have loads of different people painting it for us.
Then yeah, the photos up there in a minute. So having done all of this work, we felt we needed a ball to celebrate the Lob launch, the Lord Oliver brand we call the Lob. So we held it the weekend before the launch, and we had 260 guests. You can see Mark there with the 4 of us in the team in the bottom middle, along with Benjamin, who is Oliver's brother. You can see Mark's even had a shower there, which is quite unusual because he's normally covered in oil and dirt. But yeah, it was a really, really good evening. So you can see the top left there, some of the dressings on the table. You can see the picture of Oliver's family in the little kind of brochure there. The top middle, that is Kylie. She's the chief fundraiser for Children's Hospice Southwest. I mentioned before they've got 3 hospices, so you've got the one down in Cornwall, Little Harbour, and then you've got one up at Barnstable, and then you've got one up near Bridgewater. Top right, myself and my good lady. Bottom left, people just having a good time. And then the bottom right is the £5,000 cheque that we made at the ball for the Children's Hospice Southwest.
I think it's worth noting. I think that's sort of when it really started to hit home just how popular and big this is going to be, because I'd been to a few when I went to university. I'd been to a few balls, and they're usually around 130 people, and it's always difficult to get the last remaining 40 places sold. And these 260 places sold within, I think it was a week, wasn't it, Rich? There was about 5 places that went for about a couple more weeks after that. But it was quite special, really, to have 260 people in the same room celebrating the launch. However, as the engine owner, it was incredibly stressful, because at that stage we were celebrating the launch, which has happened in the week after. So there was a lot of anxiety from my point of view. Would our work actually pass? Would it actually pass? Would it actually work? Would we be able to pull those first trains? Because we had a few important guests lined up, so that we really didn't want to disappoint. And so there it was. So the week after, we celebrated Oliver's what would have been his 17th birthday. So that was 5.5 years after he sadly passed away. And there are a few photos of the finished product. So I think you can agree that it certainly stands out. It's extremely bright. It is as bright as it looks in the photos in real life. And the launch itself went extremely well. We ran 6 public trains, and we carried over 650 people that day, and raised another £5,000 for charity. Every single penny of the ticket sales was donated to Children's Hospice South West, and it was covered on BBC local radio. It made the BBC National News website, and we also made it on the local news on TV. It also made ITV, West Country News, and then there were quite a few media appearances after in various railway press, which you may or may not have read: the Steam Railway, the Railway Magazine. And so that was it was lovely to see after so many years of putting all the effort in to know that we'd actually made it, and more importantly, we'd raised money for Children's Hospice South West. Was really important. We also had I don't know how many families we actually had, but I think we certainly had at least 5 families from Children's Hospice South West who would currently use the hospice, who they had their own private coach, and that is a real key part of our missions. We do want to continue to raise funds for Children's Hospice South West, but what's equally important is that anyone who uses the hospice sadly has a child that has got a life-limiting condition, and that means they're sadly going to pass away probably before they make it to adulthood. So those memories that they create with their children are so important, and that's what our mission is also about, is giving them special days out, because the children see that they've got their own engine that's been painted in this ridiculously wacky color scheme. So it was special to have current patients from the hospice attend as well. And I think Rich is going to play just a short video.
Oh, we've got another slide yet, mate, I think.
Well, do we have another slide? Okay, it's just more photos, I think, of it is more photos. Yeah. And there are photos of that was the photo used in the BBC article, and you can see me. There was a gigantic children's hospice bear, which was a nice moment, and a bit of PR. So yeah, and yeah.
Just moving on there, you can see that we had the Lord Mayor there, and the town crier is the second from right at the top. Just some families enjoying it. It was a great day, yeah, it was launched by the Lord Mayor. The unveiling was done between Nikki and the Lord Mayor of Plymouth. So now,
if anybody does want to hear and see what happened on the day, if you go into YouTube and type in Lord Oliver Brown, you will get a very long clip of exactly everything that happened on the day. But for the time being, I think Rich is going to show just a short little clip that one film producer produced for us.
Yeah, let's see if I can do this then. So there should be sound of this, hopefully.
The drone age has begun in the large-scale military online action game Warzone.
There we go. Okay.
That was quite an amazing presentation.
We're not quite finished yet, Jaden, if that's all right.
Apologies.
Sorry,
Apologies.
I just want to talk about a little bit more of the fundraising we've done. So obviously we've got the Lord Oliver Brown. That is still ongoing. Mark's going to talk about a bit more about where that goes. Other fundraising we've done for the Children's Hospice Southwest, and not just that, for Bristol Children's Hospital charity, the Grand Appeal. That's the bottom left. That's when Oliver was still alive. We've done a few cycle events. That was a Land's End to Bristol Children's Hospital on the bottom left. The bottom middle one is a Ride for Precious Lives, which is a cycle ride over it's more than 200 miles and over 3 days, which we've done for I think it's 4 years. We've done that now running. Golf days, we've arranged golf days as well. They're always good for making some good cash for the Children's Hospice. I think we raised about I think it was about £4,000 on the last one. And then the top right, you've got Oliver and his brother Benjamin there. A photo of him. It's one of my favourite photos of him. That was the scan on the right. The QR code is what we had for our fundraising for that. Just move on to the next one. Go on then, Mark, if you want to carry on with this.
So we've operated it on 7 days this year. So we've done about 150 miles of running this year, and we're pleased to say we just passed all its exams for this year. So that happened last week. So we're good to go for another year, which is great. And we'll also be running all the steam trains on the Christmas Santa trains this year in December as well. So if any of you are local to Plymouth and want to see it in action, every weekend in December it will be up and running. There's just one more slide. I think if I could have that, Rich. So basically what's next for the engine? So it's still a challenge to keep the loco maintained and ready to go. As I said, we've got annual inspections that we need to get through, and that is like an MOT on steroids, always quite stressful. We'll be organising more fundraising days at the PVR as well, but we do also plan to take the engine to different heritage railways across the country. So if any of you listening have links with those heritage railways, then feel free to get in touch and we can talk about getting the Lord Oliver Brown there and sharing the joy of this engine. And finally, one of the big challenges is securing the loco's financial future. And what we're going to be doing is looking for sponsorship through various companies. And so companies will have the chance to sponsor us for various different packages, and they'll get the chance to have their name on the engine in display. So it's a little bit of advertising as well for the company. And finally, we are going to be offering company team building days. So if you're from Network Rail or rather from an external contractor and you fancy a team building exercise of how to drive a steam locomotive for the day, then please get in touch, because we're also going to be offering days out where up to 10 people can learn how to drive the locomotive and also donate to keep the engine going. So if you're interested about that, please get in touch. And that's it for me.
That's it. Thank you, Jaden.
All right. Thank you very much for that presentation. Have we got any questions on the call? Because I've got a few myself. Okay. My first question is, first of all, I do have to ask you, Mark, what magazines are you reading? Because if they're advertising locos in magazines, I think I've got to find out what ones those are.
Yeah, fair point. It is quite a specific one. It was Steam Railway magazine, so that is caters for people who are only interested in steam railways. So it is. I say it's quite a specific one. It does actually have quite a wide readership, because steam railways is a big deal in this country, much more so than any other country in the world. So it was advertised in that one, and I believe that was like one of the only few times an engine has ever been advertised like that, because usually when you buy and sell engines, it's all behind closed doors in smoky rooms sort of deals. So it was weird for this one to be out in the open in the public.
Yeah, completely understandable. another one, like what are some quirks of actual owning a steam loco? Like what are some things that people wouldn't normally know about that?
Uh, Quirks about, I mean, it's certainly very stressful because I've got an annual inspection to get through, and that thankfully we've just passed it, so I'm pretty much off the hook for 12 months. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty crazy to own a steam engine, really. I mean, one thing that I'm sort of looking forward to, we're thinking about my boy. I've got two boys. I got a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and I'm going to be hopefully organising the full. Well, when he's 4, we'll be having a birthday party on it. So that's a bit novel, I suppose. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think the best bit is obviously just getting to drive it. Really, that's quite fun.
I think the one thing that struck me when I joined the team, as it were, was that there's a boiler certificate which kind of lasts, was it 7 to 10 years, and then after that it pretty much has to be rebuilt again, doesn't it, Mark?
That's right. So we've got so we passed that test in, actually, to be fair, it was 2024. So our clock is now ticking. So in 6 years' time, possibly 9, depending on the state of the boiler, we are going to have to do we won't have to do all of it again because we'll have to do new parts, but we'll have to take all those tubes out, and we'll have to put the ultrasonic testers in areas we can't get, and we'll have to completely assess it to make sure it's 100% safe, and we'll have to do more work to make sure it is safe.
So how much of what you've got is actually from the original loco that you bought and not parts you've had to add on or parts that are new?
That is a good question. The boiler, the cylindrical boiler,
Yeah.
in about 95% is original.
Yeah.
The actual cylinders. So just for interest, the cylinders are 18 inches in diameter. So if you think about, I don't know, the cylinder of the typical car is probably about 10 centimeters at best. These are 18 inches. So that's 460 mil. And so those are all original. Mechanically, it is fairly original. We were quite lucky because it was an industrial Sunton engine, and it was only ever designed to haul big lumps of steel around. Mechanically, it hasn't actually suffered that much, so we've not really done much. But all the tin work is not tin. It's still quite steel. But all the water tanks, all the bunkers, all of that has had to be replaced, and it's brand new. Yeah.
And then I think I just had one more question. When you decided that you were going to do this and you were going to do this full rebuild, right? Like, how long did you actually think it was going to take? Like, could you see the end goal when you first got started? And like,
so I think Rick pointed out quickly, but I was 19 at the time, and I don't know what all of you guys were like, but at 19, looking back, I was certainly extremely naive. And I thought the plan was it was going to take 18 months, and the idea in my mind is that we were going to make some money out of this because ultimately most locomotives you see today are owned by private individuals, and how it works is owning a locomotive is too much of a liability for a railway, which is generally volunteer run. So owners rent them out to railways for a fee. And so I had this business plan in my mind that I was going to overhaul this engine for X amount, and I was going to make money. And yeah, so the answer is did I buy it thinking it was going to take 9 years? Absolutely not. And just I'll give a bit of numbers. So I think I paid £33,000 for it, which doesn't. I don't know whether that seems like a lot for a locomotive. I suppose it's hard to relate, but I spent over £120,000 on it now, and that's how much it's cost, and 9 years of my life. And I would say it's fair to say that pretty much most of the decisions in my life have been as a consequence of that decision I made. But so yeah, so no, I never thought it was going to last this long.
amazing. Like, that's all the questions I had. I mean, I could probably talk your ear off for the next half hour or so, but I think we've got one from Brian on the call.
Yes, can you hear me, guys?
Yes.
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Okay. I'm not very good at this sort of thing, but a great presentation and absolute 110% congratulations to what you've been able to achieve. I've been a volunteer on the Chinner and Princes Risborough Railway for 20 odd years, so I know some of the heartaches that you've obviously been through, and the amount of work and time it takes to achieve your aims. But 100% congratulations to you. I think you've made a tremendous job. And looking at the conditions that you were working under, I think that's even more so.
Yeah, thank you. I think Rich did mention the tent, but I think what Rich failed to mention is that the first 8.5 years were without a tent. they were completely out in the open air. But I think just a little point of interest. I was on the Santa specials in 2003. It would have been at Chinner in Princess Risborough, and I was only 6 or 7, 8, and that's what sort of got my passion for Stephen going, really. Just as a little interesting point. So there you go.
Well, no, that's great. Since then, we've been very lucky. We've now got a maintenance shed and everything else, and considerably more facilities. But it's really great to see, and to support to have the drive that the charity, supporting the charity that you're supporting there. You've got this aim that you've obviously achieved and are achieving. So again, well done to everybody there.
Thank you. And all I would say is, if you do have any contacts, if you are interested in Chinner, then feel free to speak to me. Though I would say is my boiler inspector happens to be a member of Chinner and Princess Risborough Railway as well. So there you go.
Oh, okay. Best of luck for the future there.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think unless we've got any more questions, I think I may do the vote of thanks now. Right, so first of all, I think I'm going to need to borrow someone's thesaurus, because I only know so many ways that I can say the word incredible, because what the piece of work you've done literally is just amazing and incredible. Like the commitment of the 4 of you together to go and put a loco together like that. Honestly, I've got my niece's toy car downstairs that she's asked me to put together 6 months ago, and I don't even know where I'd start. So just the scale of comparison is just a bit incomprehensible to me at this point, but that is just amazing. Being 19 and buying a loco, that is a big decision, and well done for making it, because what's come from here.
Very responsible.
I think that's going to be an icebreaker at parties for you for many, many years to come, I reckon.
Yeah.
Amazing. I think, right, thanks. I don't think it would be complete without giving a little bit of a thanks to Oliver as well. I do think that the name that you've given for that loco is completely correct. That the fact that Oliver chose to start putting his name down as Lord, I think that is really what the definition of a lord is. A lord is not someone who is appointed by other people, in my opinion. A lord is a person, they decide that they are the lord. And in this situation, he has inspired you all to go and do this. And I think that is the greatest evidence that is what he was and who he was. So a thank you to you all, and a thank you to Lord Oliver Brown as well. If we could do our thanks in the usual way, and do a round of applause. Thank you very much for a wonderful presentation.
Brilliant. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
No, thank you very much. And I think we'll leave it there. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Rich.
Right, cheers.
Cheers.